I am going to focus on protective strategies. So if I talk about politics and the chaos that's going on as the introduction, so to speak, you'll just have to wait it out, because eventually I'll get to the part that's protective and beneficial and biochemical. You know, if you want me to talk about magnesium, I can talk about magnesium, obviously. But we can't just bury our heads in the sand and talk about magnesium and say, oh, well, everything's going to be okay if I take magnesium. No.
Constitution of the United States of America, Fourth Amendment, protects against illegal search and seizure. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated.
As a grandparent, and I experienced something firsthand today that I will never forget in my life. And that is, we were called here to see if there were ICE agents who had the audacity to come and try to arrest and kidnap people leaving church on a Sunday morning. And so with a small group of us, I elected to see, and we did see, cars speeding, running through red lights, unmarked cars, tinted windows, and indeed, Jan and I were driving around to see if these were ICE people surveying the church, and indeed they were. We turned into a parking lot and were greeted by approximately 4 unmarked ICE vehicles with agents who immediately stopped us and pointed semi-automatic weapons in our face, asked us to roll down the windows, threatened us multiple times with arrest. I mentioned to them, or I asked them if they had a warrant for my arrest. They said, we don't need one. Wow. And they continued to threaten us multiple times, pointing guns at my wife and I's face.
And we were kind of trapped because we had come in and they jumped, they came toward us right away with their guns. And so the only way out was really to back up too.
Jan was very nervous.
I was scared. I've never had two guns.
I've never had a gun pointed at me before in my life. And to think that these individuals represent
our government.
And here I am, we're a retired couple. And this is terrorism.
Wow.
They took pictures of my car and my license. It's a personalized license that I made in memory of my grandchildren, and they mocked it. They were acerbic. They were obviously not trained at all. I've known many police officers in my life. These people were right off the streets. They just had collected their $50,000.
No level of professionalism.
Zero.
No.
They had the professional demeanor of
the
criminals.
Miranda rights.
The Miranda rights. None. No, nothing. Just unprofessional. They were like the insurrectionists you saw pictures of at the Capitol. And here they're terrorizing an American retired couple. It's unbelievable. It makes me ashamed.
I couldn't agree more, sir.
I'm just very, very ashamed.
Of course.
Especially the fact that this is my own government that for years I paid taxes to, peacefully existed, that is now my enemy. And foreign governments are our friends, and my own government has turned into my enemy.
And it's important that people, privileged white people like us, stand up for people that cannot be out here protesting because they'll be arrested.
And they call themselves Christians, out stalking people, intending to kidnap people on a Sunday morning leaving church. What has our country come to? This is unchristian.
Couldn't agree more, sir. Can you tell us more about, is this going to deter you? I know that was such an intimidating thing to experience. Can you speak on that, sir? What are you feeling now?
I feel motivated. I feel like I have an injection of B12 in me, and I am going to continue to fight. I'm doing this in the name of my grandchildren. I don't have many years left. My grandchildren do. And I owe this, and many more, all to my grandchildren.
So for those of you who think you're hardcore nutritionists and neurobiologists and whatever else, here's something you've never heard of and maybe never thought of. Maybe some of you have, but probably not too many of you, probably less than 1%.
Nobody does enough for me for it to ever be my loss. I literally don't care. Don't ever say your loss. People who say that always act like it's a big power move. And the thing is what am I even losing? Nothing. Half the time I'm putting more effort in anyways, and so it's not even worth it. So sure, my loss. Thanks.
And that will help you feel better and adapt to, but also protect yourself from this chaotic world that we have right now. So obviously I'm doing this completely spontaneously, and I think I do generally a pretty good job of my spontaneous videos because I can talk about global politics and society and corporate influence and the progressive poisoning of our world, including food, air, water, and medicine, and then break it down to, the nutritional biochemistry all within the same spontaneous conversation. So I think that's pretty good. But again, that's something that you can do as a micromanagement tactic within a larger overall strategy to combat the chaos that we're all exposed to these days. So I'll leave it at that. Hope you're all doing well. Take care. And like I said, I'm going to work on this sequentially as a way to talk about, things that we can all do to kind of protect ourselves from this crazy world that we live in right now, which apparently in the United States, if I didn't already mention this, apparently what the new social trend in the United States is illegal search and seizure. So now we have a paramilitary group, running amok in the United States, and they're illegally detaining people, even American citizens, of course. And so, that's a level of chaos that we've never seen on a huge and coordinated scale, I guess, within the United States. Obviously the United States has had a history of attacking certain groups at certain times. Sometimes it was the Japanese when they were, interned during World War II. Sometimes it was Chinese immigrants. Sometimes it was Irish. Obviously, at times, Native American Indians and African Americans. And now it's anybody with brown skin who appears to be, of whatever, Latino descent, or it's not really Hispanic descent, but sometimes that's the word that's used. It's not very accurate. But we're just seeing a level of chaos now that's just beyond anything I could have even imagined, 6 months ago. But we have to, see it for what it is and use a variety of different strategies, or I should say maybe tactics is probably the better word. We have to use a variety of different tactics within groupings of different strategies, to eventually reach the goal of protecting ourselves from all of this. So hope you're all doing well. I'll provide a few examples in the video. Some of you aren't going to want to see it, but that's just the way that it is. So if you haven't seen what's going on in the specific things that I'm referencing, even if I don't talk about them specifically, I'll show you a few video clips and then you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Hope you're all doing well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Constitution of the United States of America, Fourth Amendment, protects against illegal search and seizure. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, and the persons or things to be seized.
Constitution of the United States of America, Fourth Amendment, protects against illegal search and seizure. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated.
Joining me in studio today is George Redis. He's a Ventura, California native and a U.S. Army veteran who was taken by ICE and detained for 3 days without charges. He's now suing the federal government for the illegal detention. If you wouldn't mind just explaining, what happened.
So that day, July 10th, I was going to work as normal. I was pulling up to the main road that my work is on, and there's just cars piled up. It was chaos all over the place. And so I make my way through all this because even though this is happening, I still got to go to work. Eventually, I get to the front of where everything is happening, and there's a line of agents lined up across the road, all in gas masks. I put my car in park, I get out, close my door, and I stand right beside my car. I don't approach them. I'm not getting in their face. I tell them I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm just trying to get to work. I'm not here to protest. They were just completely hostile. They were just telling me to get the fuck out of there, that I'm not going to be going to work today. I ended up asking for a badge number just to let work know, like, I'm try to go into work, and I wasn't able to. One of the agents got super upset over that. He tries to like step forward to try to approach me, and it takes another agent to step forward and like hold him back. I'm not trying to escalate things further, and so I turn around to get back into my car, and simultaneously the line of agents starts walking towards me. They surround my car. I have agents on my driver's side, on my passenger side, pulling on my door handle, banging on my window, telling me to get out. I have agents in front of my car. I have an agent behind my car. Just all of them yelling at me to do different things, and so I'm sitting there just trying to figure out the situation, and they end up throwing tear gas into the protesters, and they throw tear gas behind my car, and it just engulfs my car in tear gas. And so I'm just trapped in the right lane in my car, just trapped with tear gas, trying to hold out as long as I can, eyes watery, trying to catch my breath. I couldn't see, and agents on my driver's side, agents on my passenger side. I'm just in there coughing, pleading with them like I'm trying to leave. Eventually my driver's side ended up giving in, and it shattered. A glass flew into my leg. Immediately following it shattering, another agent sticks his arm through and pepper sprays me in the face. They end up dragging me out of the car. They throw me down, and I'm basically like a rag doll, not fighting, just letting them do whatever. An agent comes and he kneels on my back, and then another one comes and he kneels on my neck, and the entire time they're like that, I'm telling them like I can't breathe. I was just trapped in my car with tear gas, trying to catch my breath. You guys just pepper sprayed me in the face, and now you guys are kneeling on my neck and back. Like I'm telling you guys I can't breathe. And I mean, they didn't care. Eventually, they zip tied my hands and they picked me up, and they ended up walking me back to the farm where I worked. After the time there, they put me in an unmarked car, and they drove me to a Navy base in Port Hueneme. They ended up reading me my rights there. They never said that I was charged with anything. They never said I was being arrested. They just said that they were investigating what had happened. From there, they took me to the Metropolitan Detention Center in downtown LA. I would assume they in-processed me like a normal prisoner. They strip searched me, and at that time I asked them like, when would I be able to call a lawyer? Like, could I call my family? And they just ignored me completely. I would tell them like I was trapped in my car with tear gas, and they sprayed me with pepper spray, like my skin is burning, and I tell them that, and they tell me I'll get over it, the effects will wear off. And after that, they took me upstairs and they put me in a cell with one other person. So that entire first Thursday night, I'm in the cell, and my body just burning, my hands, my face, my skin, just my entire body is on fire. No other way to put it, just an extreme heat that like just would not go away. Friday ends up coming around, and they finished doing my in-processing, and after that they let me talk to a psychiatric nurse. After the questions she asked and the way I answered them, she felt like it was best to put me on suicide watch. Suicide watch is just this yellow concrete room, concrete block in the corner with a thin mattress on top. There's this tiny little rectangle window. It's a glass door, and an officer sits up there 24/7. A psychiatric nurse comes and checks on me once a day to make sure I don't kill myself. They leave the light on 24/7. I'm in there naked in a hospital dress, and I'm like that from Friday morning to literally the point I'm released. And so Sunday morning, close to afternoonish, comes around, and an officer comes up to the cell. He walks up and he just says, I'm off suicide watch and that I'm going to get released. I'm there for a couple more hours, and eventually another officer comes up, and they open the door, they walk me downstairs, they give me back my clothes. They said that I was free to go, that all the charges on me had been dropped. That wasn't good enough for me, and I asked them, so I was locked up in here, and I missed my daughter's birthday for no fucking reason, and it was just the loudest silence ever. Never heard anything back from them, never nothing, until I wrote an op-ed in the San Francisco Chronicle, and then they came out with a tweet saying that I assaulted agents, and that stories like mine demonize ICE agents. It was really crazy to hear. It was insane that this is really the stance that they're willing to go behind and die on, that I'm just like this crazy person, and like they just try to paint me as this villain, and like I'm this bad guy, when that's not the truth at all.
There's a lot of footage of you, like the whole story you tell about when you get out of the car and then when you back up, like that's all on film.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
What are you hoping for out of the lawsuit, and what do you want them to do?
Obviously accountability. I mean, you don't just go around and take away people's rights and like get to treat people that any way you want. Take ownership of what you did to me. Take ownership of what you did, and don't lie. Like, just tell everyone the truth. And I guess the bigger picture for the bigger change is allow people to sue federal officers, basically, because right now they're untouchable. I mean, if a state officer had done what they did to me, I would be able to go to court right now and file a lawsuit for everything that happened. But it's the fact that because they're federal officers, I show up to the courthouse and they tell me basically there's no clear path for you to file a lawsuit. So they shut the door in my face, and not only my face, but for everyone that's filing a lawsuit currently. And so my bigger goal is to amend that statute, make it where to every single person could get accountability and justice for what happens to them.
Constitution of the United States of America, Fourth Amendment, protects against illegal search and seizure. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched, and the persons or things to be seized.
Constitution of the United States of America, Fourth Amendment, protects against illegal search and seizure. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's still morning, even though my watch is not wound, so it's not keeping accurate time. But nonetheless, this is Dr. Vasquez coming to you live. I'm sure some of you missed me for the past week because I was abroad exploring another escape strategy, basically. And this particular strategy did not work out. That's why it's called exploring. But nonetheless, I was at least in a different environment for a few days. Today's topic, as usual, will be a combination of many different topics. Some of you may have seen that I just posted what I'm now calling the Globalist Control Quadrad, which is an update from the previous Globalist Control Triad. So previously my concern was the combination of digital money with social surveillance, including what's going on in the United States right now. For example, I just saw this recently that the Trump administration is apparently requiring tourists that want to come into the United States, they have to show like 5 years of their social media data. I mean, that's just a level of insanity that we haven't seen before. But we are seeing a lot of insanity. And I'm not trying to be pessimistic. Kind of like, and I'm going to go back to this quote from Nietzsche because it was perfect, and it is still perfect. Nietzsche said, and obviously one of his books, he said, "I contradict as no one has ever contradicted, but I am nonetheless the opposite of a negative spirit." That may have come from Zarathustra, I'm not sure. But again, my intention is not to be negative. My intention is simply to be real. And based on that perception of reality, even if it continues to get worse, I mean, we still have to see reality for what it is. And so, again, based on that updated model, which I'm calling the Globalist Control Quadrad, I'll explain it in just a minute, just a little bit. Things seem to be getting worse on multiple dimensions, socially, politically, environmentally, and nutritionally. You know, and this is something I just thought of this morning. I haven't even had time to write it down. But you know, food is supposed to be a source of comfort and health. Hopefully comfort and health, but sometimes just comfort. You know, like I like to eat popcorn. I don't eat popcorn because it's making me healthy necessarily, because I don't think it is, but I enjoy it. Maybe I get some parasympathetic stimulation from it or something. But again, food should be a source of comfort and health, not poison. And so I'm sure anybody who's followed my channels has seen two posts that I published relatively recently, within the past 10 days or so, talking about how the Trump administration initially started saying that they were going to ban a certain group of pesticides, or continue to ban, maybe I should say, on these pesticides and chemicals that are known to be polypoisons, polytoxins. They're carcinogenic, they cause endocrine disruption, they cause immune damage. And so scientists, the medical community, governments, they all have the data that these are poisons. No question exists about this. So again, the Trump administration said that they were going to ban or block those. And then literally within weeks of saying they were poisonous and we're going to ban them, they said, oh no, now we're going to allow them. So that has to be seen for what it is. And it is intentional poisoning of the food supply, which, I guess I could call it the food pesticide poisoning paradox, because food should be a source of health and obviously nutrition. But when that same food, like lettuce and potatoes and whatever else, and it's going to trickle down into the water and the air, into everything, including meat and eggs and milk and everything else. So food, nutrition should be a source of health for us, but now it's being converted into a source of poisoning. And I guess I could say the same thing about governments and politicians as well. Governments and politicians should function to stabilize society, not destabilize society. And again, I'm an American, so I stay aware of American politics, of course. But what we're seeing is just like this progressive destabilization of society that no one can deny it. I mean, if you want to deny it, go ahead and deny it. I don't care what you do, but I'm not going to deny it. I'm going to see it for what it is. We are witnessing the intentional, ongoing, progressive, nonstop poisoning of the food supply. So, for people who want to say, oh, well, you're a doctor and you should just talk about health and nutrition. Yeah, I'm talking about health and nutrition. And one of the determinants of health and nutrition, obviously, is the food supply, which has some level of vulnerability to, political and commercial activity. So, for example, we all know that governments tend to be favorable towards big corporations because those big corporations have a lot of money. And individual politicians can be bought off, for a couple $1,000,000. And the company can then make, 10x or 20x the profit based on basically bribing politicians to allow these poisons and problems to be, poured over the population, basically. But politicians, have different strategies or different ways of relating to those corporations. One is to give them tax breaks. A lot of big corporations in the United States make a lot of money and they don't even pay any taxes. So, the tax burden goes on to kind of like the middle class in a way that's really disproportionate because those corporations make a lot of money. They don't pay their fair share of taxes. And so, the society ends up getting carried by, the so-called middle class. But as if that weren't bad enough, now, it's not like those big chemical companies are just getting a tax break. That would be bad enough. Now they get a tax break and hey, let's poison the food supply. So an article came out many years ago, probably at least 10 years ago by now, showing that America's food, air, and water was contaminated with glyphosate. And that was bad enough, but now it's going to get worse with the unleashing of these persistent organic chemicals and pesticides. So again, all of us who strive to be mature, aware, conscious, responsible adults, we have to see that for what it is. I mean, we are witnessing the intentional poisoning of the food supply. Bad enough in the United States, but it certainly happens globally now. I obviously read food labels, and for example, even last week when I was traveling abroad, I guess every country is someone else's abroad, but I remember the food in this particular area where we were was supposed to be good, and it was horrible. And so even though we were in kind of an upscale neighborhood, to give this place a fair shake, it's like, okay, well, let's go to a good neighborhood and try it out. Our food options in that neighborhood were horrible. So I'm not talking about Mexico, but we did go to Mexico, I guess earlier this year. And the food in Mexico was shockingly horrible, especially the market food. So in some countries, like especially Argentina, you have to differentiate restaurant food, which kind of targets the upper class and the tourists, from market food, And that became very clear to me when we were in Argentina last year. The restaurant food was exceptionally good, but the market food was horrible. And I think I saw the same thing when we were in Mexico. Like the market, some of the market food was just appallingly horrible. And I saw this again recently when we were traveling. Maybe I'll talk about that more in a different video or something. But again, we were in a different country in an upscale neighborhood, even though the hotel was actually very cheap. It was like $55 a night. It was amazing. But in that area, we only really had like one competent restaurant to choose from. Another restaurant we went to was, I mean, it was edible, but the place was dirty and it was just nasty. We went to another restaurant and it was okay. I mean, we could eat the food, but it just wasn't good. But the local markets were atrocious. So again, and again, I'm referencing my experience in Argentina. Restaurant food was okay, but again, that's targeting the tourists and the upper middle class. Whereas the market food was just atrocious. I mean, sometimes in Argentina, we literally couldn't find food that we could eat in the markets. And the clearest example of that was when we went to Patagonia for 2 days. We were in, a reasonable neighborhood that was kind of famous for whale sighting. So it was kind of touristy and it should be nice. And next to our hotel, we had 2 like grocery stores, markets. And like, I know how to travel and I know how to, survive off of travel food, even when it's not, exactly what I want. I still know how to, like, typically what I do is go to, if I'm getting a little bit desperate for food when I'm traveling, then I look for sardines. I could look for a piece of fruit, cheese, fruit juice or something like that. But at times in Argentina, and even more recently in the trip we were on last week, a lot of these public markets don't even have like basic survival food that a health conscious person could eat and not feel sick about it. So, if I'm getting really desperate, I look for like a package of ham that's not like totally contaminated. Or a lot of markets internationally will sell sardines from Spain, for example, preferably in olive oil, but sometimes in vegetable oil, if that's what it comes down to. And that's what I had to eat last week, was Spanish sardines in vegetable oil. Usually I can get a piece of cheese, but sometimes not. And even in last week, even in the markets there, I couldn't get fruit juice that was competent. I could get, a banana or an orange or something like that without really knowing where it came from. But all of the fruit juices were contaminated with coated additives. You may have seen, like, especially in Europe, they use a coding system, so they won't tell you what it is, but they'll put a number. It'll be like E19 or E20 or E whatever. In this other country, they had a different coding system. So even if I had memorized all these mysterious codes from Europe, I would have to decipher like a new coding system in this particular Latin American country where we were. Everything started with an S, and then it was like S19, S20. Well, shit, excuse me, but I don't know what that is, and I'm not gonna, if it's so bad that they don't even want to tell me what it is, then obviously I'm not gonna eat it. And so that was the situation. So again, food and nutrition should be a source of comfort and health for us, but now it's just being poisoned internationally. Obviously in some countries more than others. Some countries, I guess you kind of have to look at the middle ground, so to speak. Really rich countries like the United States have so much money and so much technology, and the corporations have so much power that the food is kind of poisoned because of all that constellation of corporate influence on the food supply, including all the way to the highest levels of government. I remember a couple of years ago, you could see this in my books, but specifically in the section on diabetes and hypertension, I had reviewed, this was back in 2009, 2010, the guidelines from the American government for the prevention of diabetes it was a blueprint to cause diabetes. So I remember one of the recipes that the United States government had published, one of the recipes for the prevention and treatment of diabetes was called sunshine rice, which was rice, white rice, prepared with orange juice. I mean, it can't be any more glycemic than that. So from the highest levels of, in this case, I'm talking about the American government, the food recommendations are bogus, the food supply is poisoned. And so that's an example of a rich country using technology and corporate influence to manipulate and poison the food supply and the food guidelines. But in extremely poor countries, you also see kind of the same thing, even though they don't have quite as much, obviously, money and technology, because they're dependent on imports, for example, from the United States, and just things that don't make sense. So one time, for example, I was in Peru, and like I wanted to buy an apple, and the apple was from the United States. Well, I mean, come on. Latin America, especially Colombia and Brazil, those are the two most biodiverse countries on the planet. They should obviously be able to make their own food, and in this case I'm talking about fruit. Obviously they're tropical regions with various different climates to support food production. So a Latin American country like Peru shouldn't have to import apples from the United States. I saw that in Colombia too. Even more strangely, I guess, Colombia is the second most biodiverse country in the world. And many years ago, this was about 2013, when I was in Colombia, I saw some of the fruit was being imported from Italy and the European Union. Well, I mean, come on. Colombia is the second most biodiverse country on the planet, second to Brazil, which is 7 times bigger. Why would they be importing, fruits and vegetables from Europe? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So again, the richest countries seem to be kind of subject to food poisoning, just like the very poor countries as well, due to, again, political influence. So, yeah, I'm a bit, as you can tell, a bit overwhelmed with, the kind of the progression of things over the last couple of months, I guess. And I've already said this, but I'll say it again for those of you who want the context or haven't seen the previous videos. But I did a video a few months ago, and the kind of the subtitle of that video was International Flexibility is the New Stability. And that was just kind of a general idea of saying, hey, you might want to be flexible in where you live and your ability to respond to these ongoing changes. And then I did another video when we were traveling, and I was like, whoa, things are getting kind of weird in the United States. And they just keep getting weirder and weirder. And I don't really care that much about politics. Paradoxically, I try to be aware of it, and I also try to ignore it. But some things just can't be ignored, And if we're going to be, like I said before, if we're going to be responsible adults, then we have to be aware of what's going on. I remember back in 2014, when the United States was having a bunch of race riots, I remember commenting to one of my medical mentors. His name is Patrick Donovan. He was one of my mentors at Bastyr University. And it's just on Facebook or whatever chat, I guess it was Facebook. I remember telling him, I said, I can't believe I'm wasting so much time on this social and political stupidity because, I want to focus on nutrition and health. And he very wisely responded to me saying, well, what could be more important than being aware of what's going on in your own community, in your own society, in your own country? I mean, you have to be aware of these things. So, it's not my first choice to talk about these things, but we have to talk about them. So recently, just to give another example on how crazy things are getting, and then I actually am going to talk about something you can do to protect yourself, or a couple things. So in order to keep these conversations on anti-chaos positive, I am going to focus on protective strategies. So if I talk about politics and the chaos that's going on as the introduction, so to speak, you'll just have to wait it out because eventually I'll get to the part that's protective and beneficial and biochemical. If you want me to talk about magnesium, I can talk about magnesium, obviously. But we can't just bury our heads in the sand and talk about magnesium and say, oh, well, everything's going to be okay if I take magnesium. No. So I think I lost my thread there for a moment. That's because I'm a little bit over caffeinated and underfed, but that's typical for my mornings because typically I start out my morning drinking water and doing exercise, but also drinking coffee. But what I started to say just a moment ago is every time I talk about this stuff, I am going to talk about some practical things you can do to get yourself better positioned to deal with the chaos. And I'll give you a quick example, and you can see it in the background. I think one of the strategies, and these are all micromanagement strategies. So individually, these can all be seen as petty, small, micromanagement, kind of dumb, kind of like, oh, well, that's not going to solve the problem. Yeah, nothing's going to solve the problem because the problem is huge. The problem is on a globalist level. So when I talk about, relocating or getting a bank that gives you financial flexibility or doing your own bookkeeping to save money and make sure you pay your taxes and all that kind of stuff, which I've talked about recently. All of that is micromanagement in the service of trying to have a life that works, So yeah, it's micromanagement, but everything's micromanagement, ultimately, or can be seen as that. So, what I started to say, I kind of, maybe not even kind of, but for most of my life, since I was about 16 or 17, even before that, I liked art. And I used to draw a lot when I was a kid, just like a lot of kids did. But now, I'm lucky if I can get a stick figure out. But when I was 16 or 17, I was actually kind of forecasting that I was going to study architecture. Part of the reason for that is because my uncle was an architect, and he had some positive and then sometimes negative influence on me. But anyway, I love art and architecture, and that's why I've filled my office space here with art and architecture. But that is part of my survival strategy as well. You can look at the art that I collect or even print myself. I mean, some of these aren't any good examples, but sometimes I just take a photo and get it, printed out as a poster or something like that and use that as art because it is art. But on level one, we could say, well, I like art and architecture and stuff like that, and that's why I collect art and architecture. But the way that I now perceive that is that it's actually part of my survival strategy as well, because I have a place, in this case, my own, home office, where I can be comfortable and be comforted by, the images and the art and the music and the furniture that's comfortable. Because where I live doesn't have any good architecture and very little art. And so I've had to create my own micro environment, But I do think that it kind of pacifies me and gives me a safe place to be. And I think we all have to including all of you, we all have to intentionally create a safe environment for ourselves. And that's part of surviving, global chaos. Everything just can't be chaos and sterility and, plastic furniture and aluminum chairs, We have to have a comforting environment. I'll talk more about that later. Maybe I'll make a note to myself so I don't forget it, because I actually do want to say more about that. And it's based on legit research. So maybe I'll just make a note to myself. I'm not going to talk about it right now because I want to try to keep these short. So one strategy for surviving chaos is you have to have a safe place, and for me, this is, one of my safe places. Another strategy that you have to have, I'll write this down, I'll talk about it more later, but you have to have, these days, you have to have a sleep strategy. You can't just go to bed and say, wow, I slept for whatever. These days, sleep just isn't sleep like it used to be. It's like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to go to bed. No, you have to use sleep as a chance to recover from the chaos of the world these days. And let's see, what else do I want to briefly touch on? And then I'll talk about these more later in more detail. But your environment, things that you actually touch can make a difference. And I'm going to talk about that more later. Sleep is very important, and you all know the basics. You have to have a night routine. You have to turn off blue lights, white lights, screen time. You have to start your wind down in the evening. I usually start winding down around 6 p.m. because a lot of times I go to bed at 8 p.m. And so that gives me 2 hours to kind of get in the sleep zone, so to speak, or at least start transitioning there. And as you all know, I'm a big fan of melatonin, and I've talked about it many times before. And I think for me, that's part of my chaos management strategy, is to know that I'm going to get really good sleep. And yeah, so that requires, avoiding light in the evening, having a wind down strategy, not getting too stimulated or aroused by emails and videos and things like that. For me, videos and graphics, like I'm very visual. So watching videos and doing even my own graphics, if I do too much of that late in the day, then it just overstimulates me. So I have to start shutting that stuff off around 6 o'clock or so. Sometimes not. I used to work till midnight every night, but now I don't do that anymore. Let's see. So I'm going to talk about those two things later. And so I guess I could reasonably, well, let me just say one more thing, and then I'll get into the fourth strategy. I'm sorry. Yeah, so strategy number one is you have to create an environment that works for you, where you feel comfortable and safe and kind of separate from the world. Sleep is important. You got to sleep restfully. Like sleep cannot be compromised in a world of such constant chaos these days. So it has to be a priority. And you're certainly free to use melatonin if you choose to do that. I think it helps. The third strategy that I'll mention, and again, I'll detail these out more later, but you have to exercise. We all have to exercise. And you have to create, sorry, I'm trying to write exercise. You have to create an exercise routine that works for you. And that's not negotiable anymore, especially when we're all kind of stressed out. So it has to be exercise with stretching. I'll talk about that more later. Based on some new data that I just saw today, which was published 2 years ago. But it takes that whole conversation to a different level. So you have to have an exercise routine that works for you and doesn't wear you out, because the purpose is to, strengthen yourself, not exhaust yourself like I did recently, because I started running again because I had this fantasy of doing another half marathon. And yeah, running kind of wore me out, so I may have to give up on that idea. I don't really care about running another half marathon, but I did start running again, and I paid the price for that. So let's see, exercise. So environment, sleep, exercise. And so right now I'm just going to talk about nutrition. And I'm going to talk about a specific nutritional intervention that you can use now, and that's reasonably affordable. I think it's quite affordable, but I'll get into those details in a different video, and can provide you multiple benefits. So for those of you who, again, whatever, I get, every once in a while I get some really stupid comments like, oh, you should just talk about nutrition, or you should just talk about medicine. So I'll talk about nutrition and medicine right now. I do have a level of expertise in kind of like neuroinflammation and pain management that I haven't even published yet. I have published, obviously, a lot of books on, my first book was Integrative Orthopedics, my second book was Integrative Rheumatology, my third book was on chronic pain management. A lot of that information now, of course, is in Inflammation Mastery, which is 1,200 pages. It's a big book, obviously. But I've got information that I haven't even published yet because it's new to my own experience. When I had that bike accident a few years ago and I was paralyzed, my arm was paralyzed for a while. Yeah, I had to up my game. So everything that, let's see, that was in 2020. So everything that I learned to manage that injury, that nerve injury, and the chronic pain, I had complex regional pain syndrome for a while. Everything that I learned in that process, I haven't even published that data yet. So, if you look at all my articles and books on pain, orthopedics, rheumatology, chronic pain, migraine, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, I've got a whole nother paradigm on top of that I still haven't published. Maybe I'll publish it next year. Some of it anyway. But topic number 4 for right now is a specific nutritional intervention that you can use in order to manage stress and, this globalist chaos that we're all exposed to. This obviously isn't the solution to those problems. This is micromanagement. And so, for me, it feels kind of petty even to talk about micromanaging such a huge problem with a nutritional supplement. But we have to. We have to protect ourselves. And this is one of the ways to protect ourselves. So, again, for those of you who think and live and breathe in the world of biochemistry and neurophysiology, I'm going to introduce something to you right now that you've never heard of. And I just thought of this morning. Actually, I think I wrote it down, but I didn't write it out in front of me. So I'm going to introduce a new concept to you, and this will be the main strategy for today. I'm going to call this the tryptophan kynurenine paradox. So for those of you who think you're hardcore nutritionists and neurobiologists and whatever else, here's something you've never heard of and maybe never thought of. Maybe some of you have, but probably not too many of you, probably less than 1%. So the strategy, the specific strategy that I'm going to talk about right now is the daily use, or maybe twice daily use, of a nutritional supplement